You doing all right? Good. Let's stand up and just kind of get your blood going again. And it was a good meditation. Huh? Just maybe stretch your arms a little bit. We could do some aerobics or yoga or something. Okay, you can be seated. So I want to begin. I want to talk this morning about the supernatural, but I don't really like the term supernatural, and I never have. And I've really been, for the last few years, trying to find a better word for it because it implies, for most people, it implies something that goes against the laws of nature or the laws of the universe. Correct? So we want supernatural, we want something to intervene in the natural world and change it. And so for a lot of people, we have this idea that God is this old man in the sky that's sitting up there determining who gets what and who doesn't and whether or not he intervenes. And I think that model is incorrect, to say the least. And I don't think it's helpful. And so I like the term metaphysics because it simply means comes from a Greek word, actually comes out of Greek philosophy. It means meta, meaning to go beyond or something beyond, and then physics, meaning beyond this physical reality. So it doesn't imply that something unnatural is happening, but it implies that there is a reality that exists beyond this physical three-dimensional world that we live in, right? And I think most of us would agree with that, or we probably wouldn't be here today. So I think we can start with that agreement. But I do think words are important because words structure to a large degree the way that we think. So if we're thinking in terms of supernatural, then we're trying to get something to happen without understanding that there are laws or principles implicit within the natural order, both seen and unseen, that govern how things operate. And so what looks like a miracle oftentimes is just the application of a higher law, right? So a perfect example would be the law of gravity versus the law of lift, right? The law of gravity says what goes up must come down, right? And says that man can't fly. But you can take, aeronautics and apply the law of lift, which allows an airplane, things that fly, right, to supersede or override the law of gravity by applying a different law to the law of gravity. And so there's this implicit order within all things seen and unseen, right? And that's part of the mystery that we have. And I think one of the things we really have problems with in our culture is surrendering to mystery, to just be able to say, I don't know. I think that's one of the hardest things for us to do. I think our ego demands, our insecurities, our anxieties, our stresses demand that we have some kind of stability, that we have some kind of super knowing. And so even if we're wrong, we will sacrifice truth for the sake of security, right? We'd rather be secure and wrong than say, I don't know, and have to surrender to the mystery of not knowing because it's too scary for us. I mean, some people are so afraid of the unknown, they can't even switch jobs or move to a different city or make some kind of decision because they're afraid, I don't know what's going to happen. Some people are too afraid to leave bad relationships because the comfort of the security of the bad relationship is better than the discomfort of not knowing, right? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. We have sayings like that, right? And that just reveals our fear of the unknown. And so when you start talking about metaphysics, because we are so locked into this three-dimensional world, and especially in this day and age of materialism and technology and information and social media and all that stuff that keeps all our attention focused right here, it becomes somewhat difficult and somewhat of a challenge for us to try to break out of that state of consciousness so that we can begin to open up and experience things that are beyond, things that are out there. And that can be very scary for us, right? And so then we allow religion to inform us, we allow spiritual teachers to inform us, we allow someone like myself to inform us, instead of venturing out and saying, okay, I'm going to have my own experience and see what can be validated by my own experience. I think that we can teach principles and philosophies and share our paths, but I don't think we should take our subjective experiences and say, this is how it is, and demand that other people conform to this is how it is. A lot of things that I've quote unquote gone after in the last couple of years has come out of my experience of working with myself and working with a lot of other people in the same paradigm and inside the same framework, and noticing and observing the toxicity that it creates mentally and emotionally and spiritually inside of people's lives. Stuff that puts them in bondage rather than stuff that sets them free. Stuff that limits them rather than stuff that empowers them to experience the fullness of their potential. And so that's coming out of my experience. Now, if I'm sharing something that someone else says, well, no, I've had tremendous results with doing it this way, you would be a fool to surrender what has tremendous results for you to my opinion and my idea. And so if there's one thing I'm trying to help us get away from and break out of myself is don't let other people necessarily inform you. Let them share their path, information, whatever resonates with you, whatever is helpful for you, whatever's empowering for you, take it and run with it. Whatever's not, just leave it alone, Just let it go. Just say, hey, I can honor, that's your experience, that's your point of view at the moment in your life journey, and thank you for sharing it, but I'm staying with this. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's extremely unhealthy to just be spoon-fed. It's extremely unhealthy. In order to digest food, you have to chew it up, right? You have to make a decision to put it in your mouth and chew it up and see how it tastes and let it go down and see if it makes you Dear Lord, I like spicy food. This is totally off the topic. But it kind of sucks getting old. Like, I just got to say, sorry, but some of you can maybe relate to this, because I love spicy food. I hate bland food. Like I don't get y'all that like chicken and roast beef and mashed potatoes and every night. I just don't get it. Even steak, unless it's got like some kind of steak sauce or something. I mean, give me some flavor, right, Jeremy? Am I right? Right? So I like spicy ethnic food. If it's Italian food, I want it to have some zing. If it's Mexican food, I want the hottest green chili I can get. Love Indian food. I go to the Indian restaurant, used to. Go to the Indian restaurant, I say, I want it hot. Or they say, you want it mild, medium, or hot? And I said, I want it Indian hot. And they look at me, their eyes get all big. They said, you don't know what you're asking for. I said, yes, I do. I want it Indian hot. Are you sure? Yes. If it doesn't come out red, I'm sending it back. I just love that stuff. So about a month ago, I went to the Thai restaurant over here in Pueblo West. It's free advertising for them, I guess. And it depends on who's cooking, I've noticed, because they give you like 1 to 5, right? 1 to 5. This has nothing to do with anything.
Except digesting food.
Yeah, 1 to 5. And sometimes you get a 3, and it can be super hot, and sometimes you get a 4, and it's like a 2. It just depends on who's cooking, right? I've never tried a 5, which is Thai hot, because Thai food is like the hottest food. Like, from what I've heard, it makes Indian food look mild. So I just thought, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for a 5. Oh my God. That thing, they should have made me sign a waiver. My stomach did not forgive me for weeks. I couldn't believe it. I only ate half of it or whatever. So, but here's my point. There is a point. I made a decision to try something, see how it worked, but assimilate it for myself, right? And then it's like, oh God, I do not like the result of that. So why can't we approach some things, particularly spiritual things, with the same freedom, with the same, I mean, why not? Why are we so afraid to just try something differently? Why are we so afraid to get outside of our box? Because we have to have that certainty. Same reason some of y'all eat all that bland food. Because you're afraid to try something with some spice and flavor. No, I'm just giving you a hard time. But you see, everybody has a different palate. So in the spiritual life and journey, everybody has a different job, everybody has a different purpose, everybody has a different experience, a different set of life experiences, everybody has access to different information, and that's why I think it's so tragic that in the previous age, if you want to talk, in the age of Pisces, in the age of the fish, right, most organizations and things were built around agreement. Do you believe like I believe? And if you believe like us, you can join our club. And if you think like us, you can join our club. And it allows us to have an us against them mentality because things are black and white, right or wrong, right? And of course, our way is right. We know this, right? And so we like people that agree with us, and we don't like people that disagree with us. And so for the most part, and particularly in churches and spiritual organizations, then our relationships with one another is based upon group consensus. It's based upon group think. Anybody know what group think is? And I'm telling you, every church I've ever seen pretty much is a groupthink church. Because the leadership the pastor won't bring in anybody that's going to preach contrary to them. They'll tell you what books to read. Somebody asks a question that challenges them. All of a sudden, they're either put down in the Bible study or they're alienated or whatever. Because we have to maintain groupthink because we're not built upon love or spiritual experience or sharing life together. There's no mutual honor or respect for people and their pathway and what they've done. All we care about is the group consensus. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going to keep saying it. Most of what religion is one giant group thought form that has spun off in the world, in the metaphysical world of consciousness. You got to understand, where do you think the energy of your thoughts go? Where do they go? Where does the energy of your emotion go? Where does the energy of your passion go? Where does the energy of your devotion go? Where does it go? Does it just cease existing? If it ceases existing, then probably when you die, you'll just be worm food. You'll probably cease existing. But if you believe that you have any kind of eternal essence, if you have any kind of spirit, then you've got to believe that your consciousness, because when your body dies, the only thing you have left is consciousness. And so what realm are you going to go into? You're going to go into a realm that is unseen, that is non-material, that is unphysical, that is nothing like this world. But you're doing non-material things all the time. I was telling you the story just now about the food, right? So how many of you, maybe, in your mind, you were following along and you were trying to imagine what did that Thai food look like? I wonder what he ate. Maybe when I mentioned the Thai restaurant, you've been there and you thought about that. Maybe you thought about your own experiences. And so you had these sort of running movies and commentaries, right? Hearing your thoughts, seeing pictures. And yet we can kind of... We can cut open your brain. We're not going to find film. We're not going to find recordings, right? So your very existence is based upon non-physical, metaphysical realities. So where does that stuff go? Nothing can be created or destroyed, only recycled, right? So what if it's possible that we exist as part of the divine intelligence? What if this spiritual world is really just a world of energy and information? What if it's just a place of energy and information? What if... In the beginning was the Logos, the Word, right? God, in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." That's not just in the Bible. Did you know that you heard of Taoism, right? You know, the Tao is the underlying principle of natural order. And Taoism is an Eastern philosophy to help you live in the flow with the natural state of things. Did you know in the Chinese translation of the scriptures of John chapter 1, where it says, "In the beginning was the Word," in the Chinese translation it says, "In the beginning was the Tao." And if you understand what logos was from the Greek, read Plato, read Aristotle. I mean, read philosophers. Understand the culture out of which this came before you build a dogma out of it. Language is not, why am I doing this? Language is not important. We get so hung up on language. It's what linguists call a nominalization. What's it mean to nominalize something? It means to confuse the name of something, the label of something, for the thing itself. See, all languages, all words is ways for us to describe phenomena and experiences that we've had so that we can give structure to our experiences, so that we can retain it and build upon it and communicate it to others. But the words themselves are not the phenomena. And what we do is we fight over language. We fight over language. The Greek philosophers understand there's the phenomena of an intelligence, a unifying order to creation that both created it and holds it together, and they called that the Logos. In the East, they understand that, and they call that the Tao. In Hebraic religion, they call it the Ein Sof. So we fight about, if we don't use the right language, but yet we're just using different terms and different words to describe the same phenomena. Does that make sense? I mean, for those of you that come out of the Christian background, of evangelical Christian background, the Bible says, whoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, right? You got to end your prayers with the name of Jesus. If you don't end your prayers with the name of Jesus, somehow you are an infidel, or there's no magic power in it, right? So when we read, whoever calls on the name of the Lord, what do we think? Whoever calls on the name of Jesus, right? Except, I got news for you. Okay, so let's just do this. So let's go to Mexico. Who are they calling upon? Somebody said it. Jesus. Oh, wait a minute. Now I'm confused. So do I have to pray in the name of Jesus, or do I have to pray in the name of Jesus? And to make it even worse, if you go back to Palestine in the first century, and the Christ was walking by, and you said, "Hey, Jesus," he wouldn't even look your way. He wouldn't even flinch. He wouldn't even know you were talking to him, because Jesus that term hadn't even been invented yet. His name in Hebrew was Yeshua. So if you want to get his attention back then, you had to call on Yeshua. So which is it to be saved? Do I call on Yeshua? Do I call on Jesus? Do I call on Jesus? Now I'm confused. And actually, that New Testament is a quote from the Old Testament, and the word there is Yahweh. So is it Yahweh? Is it Yeshua? Is it Jesus? And that's the kind of stuff we want to argue about. So if we could let go of language, if we could realize language is just a map, it's just a way for describing our experience, but then there is the phenomenon itself. There is the reality that transcends language itself, that we only try to use language to describe and talk about. And maybe everybody's kind of talking about the same thing from their own perspectives and using different language to get there. And maybe, just maybe, there are powerful forces that want to control you that use language to do it. Because language is how you structure your stuff. So let's come back to religion then. So what happens to the thoughts and what happens to all that information that you're sending out? What if it just kind of goes out into this field of intelligence, this field of consciousness that we're participating in? And what if like attracts like, or like synthesizes with like, or comes together with like? And what if, like you can do this, seriously, like have you ever been in bondage to something in your life that you know you created? Like, it could be like I don't like to use addiction because you're adding a substance there, but somebody that has a compulsive behavior, that they do something that they do compulsively to make themselves feel good. It could be compulsively watching television. Did you know that every time your phone goes off, you get a ding, or you get a Facebook message, or you get a text, that you get a little shot of dopamine every time from your brain? Just a little shot of dopamine. That means that's the feel-good chemical. And so it's like, oh, somebody's thinking of me. Oh, somebody. And so you get little surges of dopamine throughout the day. You do that for a year. You do that for a couple of years. Guess what? You're addicted to that. That's why you can't put your phone down. Some people are addicted to their drama and their stress. People that have trauma bonds, that bond around trauma, they're bonding around the trauma because the feeling of the trauma, and they keep talking about it over and over and over again because it keeps producing that same thing. And then pretty soon what happens? You can't get away from it. It takes on a life of its own. You realize, this is bad for me. I'm not living my life. I'm looking at a screen. The screen's not real. I don't have any real friends. I've got electronic friends. And so I don't know what it's like to sit around anymore and play games with friends and talk and just laugh and just enjoy each other. But that used to give me a dopamine rush, right? Because it does the same thing. But now I need my little fix. And so you try to do that. And so you go to people, you try to talk to people, they're constantly on their phone. What? So that thing takes on a life of its own. How many know anger can take on a life of its own? If you are angry too often, then pretty soon you realize this anger is destructive. But then it doesn't matter what's going on. All of a sudden the anger just comes out of nowhere and like, bam. And then you're done. You're like Daniel Goleman in the 90s. He wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. He called it emotional hijacking. He explained about how the brain becomes emotionally hijacked by things like states of anger, or states of fear, or states of anxiety. Anybody ever had an anxiety attack? You spend all this time worrying and worrying and worrying, and then what? Pretty soon it takes on a life of its own. You're walking out to your car one day, and all of a sudden, bam, you just get hit with an anxiety attack out of nowhere. Nothing bad happened. There's no threat, but just bam. Next thing you know, you're breathing hard. Things take on lives of their own, right? So our thought forms, our feelings, our thinking can become powerful enough that it takes on its own expression. Families can have sort of this sort of entity and personality to it. And you can do all kinds of crazy stuff in your family, But the moment you break with the thought form, the agreements, this is how we relate. This is how you fit in the family system, and you're going to stay there no matter what. And it doesn't matter if you're getting better, getting freer about your authentic self. It's just you have to stay this way in the family system because this is how the family system works. And we depend on the family system in order to be able to function. It's a thought form that takes on a life of its own. It becomes an entity in and of itself. So what happens when you have millions of people around the world adhering to a creed? I mean, if you really study the history of how the creeds in the church came together, it's pretty appalling. It really is. You know the biggest threat? You had two groups of people in the early church. You had those who were the Orthodox and those who were not. And it was all about who the bishop was, and it was all about who had the authority. How many of you were ever Catholic? Any former Catholics? A couple of you. Did you ever hear the term used, apostolic succession? Do you even know what apostolic succession is? Do you know why the Roman Catholic Church says they go all the way back to Peter? Because it has to do with the authority and the way they structured the church early on. You had different leaders, you had different bishops, you had different teachers teaching different things. And so to rise to power, the way that they cut off those other influences and those other authorities was they said, we have the right teaching because we got it from Peter himself. We got it from John himself. We got it from the apostles himself. Now, you can't prove that they did. They just decided somewhere around the 3rd or 4th century to say that they did. And so anybody that doesn't teach like us, doesn't go all the way back, doesn't have the apostolic succession back to Peter, and so they cut them off. And you know the ones they hated the most? The ones they hated the most were the Gnostics. Because the Gnostics would tell you, you don't have to submit to orthodoxy. You don't have to submit to your bishop. You have the divine presence inside yourself. You can experience things for yourself. And we will show you how to have your own experiences, but ultimately let your own experience rule over your own life. Oh, we can't have that because then the bishop loses his influence. Then we don't have our collective influence. And what if these guys knew something about thought forms and the power of thought forms? And so while Jesus said, let be known by your love for one another, build your relationships on love. Instead of that, they said, no, I know, we'll build our relationship on a thought form, which means we have to get people agreeing to the same things. Not only agreeing to the same things, but doing the same rituals, because that's going to add emotion, and that's going to add devotion. So now we're thinking alike, we're all thinking the same things, we're all doing the same acts of devotions. By the 2nd or 3rd century with the church fathers, you couldn't even meet in a home and have a prayer meeting without the bishop present. Why? Because you're not contributing to the thought form, you're not contributing to the groupthink. And maybe they understood we can create an entity that exists in consciousness. We can create our own God that will eventually be powerful enough to answer our prayers. That will eventually be powerful enough to have influence over the physical realm. And so we have to convert people to that thought form. We have to make them think like us. We have to make them believe like us. And I'm telling you right now, you can do anything. You can get away with anything. I know from personal experience. They don't really care what you're doing. They don't care what you're struggling with. They don't care if you're depressed. When you have a voice. Now, if you don't have a voice and it can make you more dependent upon them, then yeah, they'll show up at your house with... But you break with the thought form. You disagree. I don't believe that anymore. I had preachers that knew I was going through stuff. I hadn't heard from them in 5 years. I post on Facebook, I don't believe in hell and eternal conscious torment. And my inbox gets flooded with these, oh, we're so concerned about your soul, brother. Oh, we just love you. I wanted to send the middle finger emoji. I really did. And I don't even feel bad about it. I mean, when there's so many rules and regulations, and you got to act like this way, and you got to be this way, and in order to be part of the group, you got to maintain these friendships. There's no authenticity. You can't be authentic. And I found out that some of the metaphysical, holistic groups are just as phony or worse. So that doesn't mean that thought form is God. It just means it acts like God in some realms to those who participate in it. I know that's harsh, but again, like I said, you don't have to surrender what you think for what I think. I'm just sharing out of my own research and study and experience. And frankly, if you're going to connect with that which is truly divine, you have to be able to discern between what is thought form and groupthink and what is the actual intelligence that's organizing and running all things visible and invisible. I did a video with Aaron Apke this week on about the devil for Halloween. And one of the things he said, you know, if we have this idea that there's this devil that's deceiving everybody and doesn't care, like it's just crazy, man. It's just crazy. I posted this thing about Joe Dispenza having healing meetings in his workshops and getting results. He said, and they test it, you know, scientifically, and they have physicians on staff. And he said 1/3 of the people that go through those things are getting full remission, full recovery. And I had some guy post, oh, that's just the devil. He's working with the devil. And I'm like, how in the world? Since when? Like, where in the Bible was there ever a spirit of healing that came from the hell? I read about spirits of infirmity. I'm just like, what? You know, just like that guy a couple weeks, and I'm sorry if I'm going off this morning, but that guy on a really well-known Christian publication that said the gates of hell have opened up and they're unleashing this horrible thing upon the earth. And you're like, what is this horrible thing they're unleashing? Unconditional love and total and grace. Hyper grace and unconditional love. I'm like, oh my God, hell opened up and here it comes. Like, these guys genuinely believe the biggest problem in the world is that their people are loving too I mean, really, the biggest problem in the world, the biggest opposition to God is unconditional love. Really? Being gracious to one another. I mean, it's so freaking crazy. It's crazy. But they believe, you know, there's this devil, you got to believe like us, and if not, it's the devil. I mean, it's the oldest trick in the book. If you don't believe like us, there's some evil powers out there. Well, and so my friend Aaron Apke, he says, you know, if that's true, God is getting his lunch. The devil is wiping the floor with God. Because at best 20% of population, that's being extremely generous. That's including, you know, Catholics, Orthodox Christians, which I know most charismatic Pentecostals don't include, evangelicals don't include them. They don't believe like you. They don't believe like you. And they got weird stuff, man. Eastern Orthodox, they got weird stuff. One guy I knew that got ordained, they brought out the hands of Thomas for the laying on of hands for his ordination. It's a relic. They brought out skeleton hands of some dude from frickin' the first century, maybe, and then put those ghastly things on you in the name of God in order for you to get some anointing and apostolic succession. All right, where am I going with all this? Are you breathing? So 20%, if you include all that stuff, is saved and going to heaven. And Aaron's like, so 80%, so like the devil is just wiping the floor with God. Like it's not even. I don't know why I got off on all that. So here's my point, I guess. If we are going to be able to really explore metaphysics, what is beyond the physical realm? How do I tap into things that will really genuinely change and transform my life? We have to unplug from the nonsense. Because if we don't unplug from the nonsense, then we will end up following things that absolutely aren't true. Anyway, I posted this thing from Joe Dispenza, and this guy comes on, oh my God, that's the work of the devil. I've known so many people in Europe that were working miracles by the power of the devil. I know so many people over here. I'm like, dang, a lot of people that are working miracles. Like, I seriously can count on one hand the people I know that can consistently manifest the miraculous. I'm like, dang, you know a lot of people. So I just put that, oh, wow, a lot of people doing, miracles by the power of the devil and whatever. And he comes back, he says, oh, I just wish I had words to tell you how great the heart of God is. And what did he tell me? He says, but it's obvious you've renounced Christ, you've renounced the Bible, and all that stuff that I'm getting used to hearing. And then he says, I love you much love. So then I went to respond. I couldn't respond. Why? Because he blocked me. I mean, how do you do that? Much love, unfriend, block. I mean, how can we not see the stupidity of it all? I just thought, wow. Like, what a trip. But the point is that, our minds are really, really good at misleading us and at deceiving us. And there are a lot of things out there that will try to make you afraid. I found people in the quote-unquote New Age movement, they're more afraid of dark energies than Christians. Really true. And they'll label you dark in a heartbeat. And the reality is none of us is perfectly light or perfectly dark. We're a mixture. And you know what? I kind of think that's how it's supposed to be. That's kind of like that is the Tao flowing in the rhythm of the unified principle of life. You're just never going to get away from some of that stuff. And you weren't meant to. And all this stuff creates for us, to bring it back to something I talked about last week, all this stuff creates for us is resistance to life. Like all the shoulds, all the oughts, all the musts that we internalize, that we think we have to be in order to play a part in our family system, or in order to play a part in our religious system, or in order to be acceptable to God. Right? All those things unconsciously guiding our life, unconsciously guiding our behaviors, preventing us from finding our authentic self and living and expressing our authentic self. And it really does take it takes strength, man. It takes boldness. You really are a spiritual warrior if you decide, I'm going to not allow my authentic expression of who I am in the moment be muted or diluted because of groupthink, because of peer pressure, because of rules of who I ought, should, and must be, and I didn't even get to choose it. And if we believe, gang, that we came here for some reason, for some purpose, so if we believe that that this intelligence, whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it God, if you want to call it the Tao, if you want to call it the Logos, I prefer the term God, but I know it's got a lot of baggage with it because we think old man in the sky. Some people call it creator, some people call it source, some people call it God, and we get all shook up over terminology, nominalizations, right? But if we believe that we came here, then we came here for a reason. And you came with everything you need and everything you need to know in order to fulfill that. It's already inside of you. I cannot stress that enough. It's already within you. And as long as you are organizing your life according to someone else's coordinates, you're living their life, not yours. And there's a bunch of people out there that want you to live their life, not yours. And it takes some kind of strength to be able to say, okay, I am going to start being authentic. I'm going to start voicing who I am in the moment. Right? Now, here's the thing. If I love myself, if I respect myself, then I will not only give expression and take care of and love who I am in the moment, I will also have respect for my future self. I will want to act in a way that's loving towards myself in the moment, but also that's loving towards myself in the future. Which means then that I do give thought to the consequences or potential consequences to my future self in my present expression. And if I can't do that for me, I certainly can't do that for you. I live with me, you live with you, everywhere you go. Everywhere you go. Every moment of your life, there's sometimes I'd like to take a break from me. It'd just be nice. Just be nice to take a vacation from Aaron for a while. Just be somebody else. Do you ever get on your own nerves? Like you think it's the other person that's getting on your nerves, but really it's not. It's just you're getting on your own nerves. So the point is, like you are stuck as the axis mundi of your consciousness, of your world. In that sense, you are the God of your own world. And you will experience the consequences of whatever choices you make in the present moment. So if I don't have enough respect for myself and enough love for myself to be mindful of the consequences to myself, I certainly can't do it for you. But if I can learn those things for myself, then I can start giving you what I've experienced for myself. Here's what I mean. If I'm fighting for my authentic voice and people are getting pissed off and people are trying to push me back in that box and I understand the struggle and I meet someone else who's resonating because they're trying to live in their own authenticity, do you think I'm going to want to add to their struggle? Do you think that I'm going to want to put something on them? I'm trying to figure out what my son is doing. He's looking for his mom. Do you get it? So now I can give you that same kind of grace. And if I can think about what are the consequences of my actions to myself, I can start thinking, what are the consequences of my actions to that other person? And when I've experienced suffering and pain, there's just something innately within most of us that wants to help alleviate suffering and pain for other people, but not in a way that dishonors their journey, not in a way that dishonors their authenticity, not in a way that you take on their problem instead of letting them work on their own problem. The worst thing you can do in life is take on someone else's problem. Now you're living their life. Now you got your own crap to deal with and their crap too. Why do you want to do that? So here's what I mean. So if I love and respect myself, then I also love and respect my future self. So I'm not going to go use substances that I'm going to get addicted to because I've seen where that path leads, and I don't want future Aaron to have to deal with those problems. So I'm not indulging, not because, oh, I shouldn't. Oh, it's wrong. Oh, God is going to judge me. I'm not indulging because I love myself enough to love my future self to say I'm not going there. Is everybody breathing? Cover a lot of ground. But I'm saying, really, I guess what I'm trying to say is try it. What would happen if you just unplugged from the matrix? You unplug from all the groupthink programming that you've bought into because you need security or you're afraid of the unknown. And what if you honored yourself and honored the divine within you enough to realize you have every bit as much divinity within you as anyone else on the planet? Some people just become more aware of it and tap into it more than others. And what if God wants to have a unique experience through you and find a unique expression of God in you? And you're frustrating the move of God because you're trying to conform so much to the pattern of this world that you're living someone else's life, making someone else's mistakes, letting someone else govern your decisions when they don't have to live in your shoes. The more I awaken to this principle, the more I try to live it, the more I try to embody it, the more advice givers piss me off. Like, who are you to know better for someone else how they should live their life? And what if you're wrong? What if that isn't the best thing for that person? And then they go out and act on it, and they live it. Now they're living your... Like, who are we? Like, people get so upset at people making decisions that don't even really affect them. Think about it. Some of you know this, right? Think about it. Oh, they can't do that because, and then they just create all this drama and suffering. And sometimes I think we don't want to work on our own project. We want to work on somebody else's project. We don't want to take responsible and be responsible to ourselves for ourselves. I think that's part of the issue. I don't know how we got from metaphysics into all this, but hopefully I said something today that was helpful for you. Hopefully it was encouraging and helpful. And if not, put it on the shelf. I hope you'll still come back next week. God bless you. Have a great day.